tonight is about the love threshold, which is, I think of it as the heart of coaching from Essence. In my experience, this is really what stops most people from creating what it is they really want. And one of the reasons it's hard to get at it is because it goes back a little bit. Like the love threshold doesn't just appear when you're 50 or 40 or 30 or 60, in my case. It starts very early. And so in some ways it kind of puts us on the cusp of doing work that might seem like therapy. And there's kind of a continuum or a fine line between coaching and therapy and mentoring and all of those things. And the way that I think about it is that all of those things are forms. So I'm not a therapist. I aspired at one time to be a therapist. I have a master's degree in counseling and briefly was under supervision and supposedly did therapy. But I'm not a therapist. I saw a therapist once. No, I saw a therapist. I've seen a therapist 3 times. Just one session each time. But all of these things are forms. The criteria for me, whether or not I work with someone in some area of their life, the only criteria for me is whether or not it's helpful. Who decides whether or not it's helpful? The client does. I can't decide. So I have an idea of something that might be helpful to the client, and I'll try it with the client, and if the client tells me it's not helpful, then I know I'm at the limit of my skills. Or permission. If I'm going to go somewhere that feels like therapy, I'll ask for permission. I'll say, listen, I'm noticing something. Is it okay if I share an observation about what might be influencing this, or whatever it is? So I ask for permission, and I ask the client if it's helpful, and if it's not helpful, I don't try to push on it. And I have suggested to people that, it really seems like you would benefit from therapy for this. That would be more appropriate and probably more helpful for you. But the way I determine that is whether or not the client feels what I'm doing is helpful. My intention is always just to help in whatever way I can. So when I enroll a client to work with me, there are 4 commitments that I ask them to make. And the first commitment is all in, meaning everything is on the table. That doesn't mean that I'm a therapist, but it means that no topic is taboo. They can bring up whatever they want to talk about, and I'll try to be helpful. And then if I'm not, I might refer them to somebody. So that said, you might be surprised what comes up in my coaching conversations, even with CEOs or executives or people you think might not bring up the kinds of things that we would talk about. We talk a lot about love. I talk a lot about love with many of my clients. Not all of them, but many of them. I talk about how, as a leader, the most important thing you need to remember is that everybody needs your love. So, why does everybody need your love? The reason that everybody needs your love, among probably many reasons, but one of the main reasons everybody needs your love is because we have all been wounded. And I want to acknowledge that I'm going to talk about some things now that for some people may bring up some things that are uncomfortable, or may not. But if you have experienced trauma in your life, that may come up for you. And I want you to know that you're safe here for whatever comes up. Part of, when you're working with things like this, part of the challenge is to calibrate it. So there are some people who have endured real abuse and trauma. And then, and we have to acknowledge that and respect that and see it and hold it and make space for it and not minimize it in any way. And then there are some people who will talk about a wound that seems so superficial that it's easy to discount it and say, what, why were you upset about that? I mean, the things that I most remember about childhood, I was fortunate in that I really didn't have, what would be considered abuse or things like that. I had very small wounds. But when you're a kid, you have no armor. And so we shouldn't discount that either. All of those little wounds make a deep impression when you're a child, and you maybe don't even understand, or you have no way of defending yourself, or the person who wounds you is the person whose love you most want. And again, I don't want to exaggerate it, but we have to respect that even the smallest wound is a wound. The reason this is so important is that if you embrace the idea that we are all endowed with an essence, a way of being in the world that's valuable, and that we all come into the world with some unique way of being here that is a gift, then the sort of universal tragedy of life is that none of us, as far as I can tell, maybe there are exceptions, but none of us, as far as I can tell, have been fully embraced and supported by that, for that. Even if you were fortunate enough to have Vanessa and Hector as your parents, you grew up in a society that doesn't value essence. It values self-interest, status-seeking, scarcity, and survival. And it values control. And I just read recently, I forget where it is, but somewhere in this country, they're bringing back paddling in school. It's going to be legal to paddle your kid in school. Okay? So what happens is, as far as I can tell, we have all been wounded. We're the walking wounded. And the wound is, we all come into the world with an essence. We all come into the world with our own way of loving the world and each other. And we all come into the world with a way of serving and giving in the world. The love threshold is the fear that if you really knew the truth about yourself, you would discover you were unlovable. And that even worse, everybody else would find out. So how is it possible? How is it even possible that you could ever think that you were unlovable? The reason it's possible is because each of us learned how to create a false self in order to be loved. Again, even if you were fortunate enough, if your parents loved you and they created a lot of space and permission, there's no perfect way to express your essence as a kid and have full free reign, like we talked about. Everybody here has an essence. We're going to bump into each other and so forth. We have to learn how to negotiate and navigate and attenuate and know when to sort of turn it down and when to turn it up and all of that. But even if your parents supported you as well as they could with that, it's not the message we get elsewhere in our lives, in school or friends or media or advertising and so forth. And so the problem with the wound is that we try to solve the problem of the wound by becoming someone we're not. We sacrifice our essence. We forget our essence in order to become something that other people will love and approve of. And one of the essence questions was, when you were a kid, what made you cry? that question can sometimes lead to essence, because what the answer to that question is saying is, when was your essence frustrated? And so if you think about what would make you cry when you were a kid. When I was a kid, we used to live in a house with stairs, and if I was upset about something, I would cry and I would go to the stairs. And you could tell how upset I was by how far I went up the staircase. If I wasn't that upset, I'd be on the first or second or third stair, so that you could come and get me and it would be okay. But if I was really upset, I was on the 7th or 8th stair, and that meant I was that really hurt. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Have your own experience of that? So think about the things that would have made you cry when you were a kid. Think about the things, and when I say think about it, I mean take a minute now to think about it. Think about the things that maybe your parents said to you that hurt more than they probably intended. You know, again, I'm picking on my father a little bit. I don't want to mislead you. I loved my father, and he was a great father. But I was a pretty sensitive kid, and there were things that he said to me that just hurt. You know, he would say things like, if you change the channel on the TV, I'll break your arm. Now, he would never break my arm. But as a kid, I was like, oh my God, my dad would break my arm, you know? So think about it for a minute. Just take a minute, literally, to reflect. What kinds of things maybe did your parents say, or people who you knew loved you? You know they didn't mean to hurt you or anything, but it still hurt. Can everybody think of something? Yeah. Cookie. Yeah.
One thing that just comes to mind is my father used to threaten me to send me to boarding school. So I was an only child, and we lived in Peru. If he sent me to boarding school, that would be really far away.
Yeah.
And just the pain and the thought that he would just get rid of me.
Thank you, Cookie. Anyone else want to share anything? Yeah, it's a hi.
My mom would say, don't talk back.
Yep. And how did that feel?
Extremely painful.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's a hi. Allison.
Yeah, but if I did something that my mom didn't like that apparently I'd done before, she'd say, that's so typical.
Yeah. Are people umming because you maybe heard something like that too? Because I thought, yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that. Anyone here, well, what I would sometimes hear is, don't get too big for your britches. And that was usually when I was really expressing myself, you know? It's like, no, tone that down. Yeah.
Who do you think you are, kid?
Oh, yeah.
Anytime I got excited about anything or thought I did well at something, who do you think you are, kid?
Yeah. Who do you think it? So you see how we get these messages to keep us small. Yeah.
You're just like your father.
Just like your father. And what was your father like?
Divorced from my mother.
Okay, right. Okay. Great, thanks, Jeremiah. Yeah. Gary.
I remember my grandmother, who generally was a really benign presence, but I remember her saying once, if you don't behave or if you're not a good boy, I'm going to leave and go live with someone else. I remember that really stuck with me.
Sure.
You know?
Thanks, Gary. Someone else? Oh, John's just scratching his mask. Sorry, I always warn people it's a little bit like an auction. If you do that, you get called on.
My dad would grab my hand and make me punch myself and laugh and say, why are you punching yourself? And I wasn't laughing.
Yeah, and you weren't laughing, right?
For me, I would really get upset by any violence or television or just news of war. I was just really, it would really impact me. And I think everyone always tried to like normalize it. And I was like, I just felt the injustice and the inhumanity in it.
Yeah.
And I think it was like okay for me to feel that. And
Yeah.
everyone always just tried to like, you know, kind of like make it okay.
Yeah. So in other words, they tried to make it okay, you shouldn't be upset about that. Yeah, right. How many of you heard "don't be so sensitive"? Yeah. Oh yeah. It's it's bringing back all kinds of memories now. Yeah, Greg.
Say my siblings, I was the youngest of 5, and they were mean. Some of the things that I would say, and or not include me, kind of rejecting.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Greg. See.
I was making choose between my mom and my dad in the alleyway, which one I was going to go with.
Oh, wow.
And they were both giving me crap on who I was going to go with.
Yeah, that's hard. Thanks, Zeke. So, these wounds stay with us. And those messages go deep. Who do you think you are? Don't get too big for your britches. Don't be so sensitive. You know, they stay with us. And they go down deep. And we're not aware of them. They hide. And that's one of the things that makes the love threshold so difficult, is that it hides. You know, that fear hides. Like for me, it hid for 60 years, and then it came out of hiding when my life fell apart. Because I thought my life was pretty together, and then it more or less completely collapsed. And then I had to come face to face with it, and I realized what was there. And that's where I got the idea of the solution to the problem that no longer exists. So what happens is we try to solve the problem of being wounded in our childhood when we were vulnerable and didn't understand and didn't have the defenses. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. You know, they didn't understand. They didn't mean to hurt us, or if they did, it was because they were in pain themselves. And so I understand that. So it's really nothing about them. What it's about is I took that wound and I said, how do I solve this problem? And my solution to the problem was to become someone I wasn't. The solution to the problem is, you know, and it's going to be different for everybody, but the solution to the problem was some kind of strategy for doing something that I thought somebody I cared about would love. For me, partly with my father, it was I thought if I could just accomplish enough, if I were successful enough, if I made a ton of money, because my father always dreamt of making money. I thought if I could just make a lot of money, then my father would love me. My father was a salesman, so I thought if I could get really good at sales, then he would respect me and he'd approve of me. And he'd understand me, because he understood that. Now, the bad news is I did a lot of things that weren't me. You know, I sold cars. The good thing is I learned how to sell. I don't think of it as selling. I think of it as serving. But, you know, I did learn something there that was useful for me. That's the dark ally, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But we all come up with strategies, solutions to a problem that no longer exists. The problem that no longer exists is I don't have to do anything to prove to anybody that I'm lovable. All I have to do is be my best self and put myself out in the world and try to serve in the best way I can and trust that somebody will love me. And, you know, I mean, I don't have to try to become someone I'm not because I'm attached to the result of some particular person or somebody loving me. I just put myself out there. I'm not attached to results. We were talking about this a little bit at lunch or breakfast with a few of you. The conversation came up in different conversations about serendipity. You know, and it's really just about creating things, putting yourself out there and serving, because you don't know where it's going to come from. So you can't be attached to trying to persuade anybody to love you. If you're trying to persuade a client to love you, that's performance syndrome. You're doing the same thing you did as a kid. You're pretending to be something you're not, and you're trying to prove yourself to somebody. That's not good coaching. What you do is you serve from your essence. You try to create as much value as you can from your best self. So the solution to the problem that no longer exists is we come up with all kinds of strategies. One of my strategies was to learn how to sell. One of my strategies was to be smart. I just tried to be good at everything so that my, other kids in school would think I was good. When I was in art class, I really wanted to be good. I was the teacher's pet, and other kids would come over and show me their artwork, and I thought, oh, okay, so I've earned some love from this. But sadly, I actually wasn't an artist. That was not part of my essence. But I tried to do all these different things to earn love. Now I want you to just think for a minute, what are all the things that you've done that weren't you? That you did because you thought somebody would approve of you or respect you or admire you or love you? What are some of the false things that you've done or created that weren't your essence? Just take a minute to think about that.
It's hard for me to think of something.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if that means that I'm skipping over stuff lightly or.
I mean, I can see my essence coming through even in things that were some of the betrayal of self.
Yeah, did everybody hear what Vanessa said? She said, I can see my essence coming through even in things that were betrayal of myself.
Right.
Yes. And the reason for that is your essence always comes through. Your essence has to come through. So it's always there. I mean, when I was selling cars, my essence was there. I was actually trying to serve people. It's funny, so I worked at a car dealership where, the dealership was on one side and the parking lot with all the new cars was on the other side of the street. And almost all the time when people were shopping for a car, they'd come and they'd go across the street and they'd start looking through the parking lot at all the cars. And so I used to just cross the street and I would talk to them and I'd coach them basically. I would try to coach them to get the car that would make them happy. I wouldn't try to sell them a car that they didn't want. Like when I would go looking for a car, they would say, oh, you probably want a sports car. No, I wanted a Honda Civic. I wanted an energy efficient, whatever. So my essence was still there. But I was doing it because I thought, oh yeah, okay. If I can succeed at this, I know it maybe sounds a little funny, but I thought if I could succeed at this, my father would understand this, And so it's like we do. So here's the thing that happens. Here's where it really becomes a problem, is we confuse form then with essence. And we start to create forms that don't match our essence. But whatever form you create, your essence has to come through. It's like, it's like that little thing that has to crack through the concrete, that little bit of growth. It has to find its way out. Because without it, you become seriously, seriously, seriously depressed. So yes, you're right. You do things that are a betrayal is actually not too harsh a word. A betrayal of yourself. And your essence still finds a way through, but you're doing a form that has nothing to do with who you are. But you do it in a distorted way in order to let a little bit of your essence come through. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. And so, yes, it's a misapplication. And so surprisingly, you can be talking to people who are very successful. I have worked with a lot of CEOs and high-level executives and successful entrepreneurs. And these are people who come across as incredibly confident. And you would never think that they had a love threshold. And it comes up in subtle ways. So the problem with the love threshold is that it impacts everything. It impacts how you are in relationships. It impacts whether or not you even think you deserve a healthy relationship. I mean, one of the clues to me that I had love threshold work to do when after my heartbreak was realizing what an unhealthy relationship I had been in. Not necessarily because of the other person, but just I was showing up in a way that was totally unhealthy. I mean, it was the dance between the two of us. But if you've not done your love threshold work, you will have unhealthy relationships because you'll be playing that out. It'll impact your success. It'll impact your ability to create because you'll start to create something and then some part of the little voice in your head says, who do you think you are? Don't get too big for your britches. And so the doubt comes, the voices of doubt. In Hero's Journey terms, it's the guardians, right? It's not just the people outside of you that say, who are you to think that you can create a successful business or become a successful coach or whatever. It's our own voices that say, who am I? Who am I to do this work? Who am I to be a coach? Right? So it's always there, and it impacts our relationships, it impacts our ability to create, it impacts our ability to lead. And the way that you know it is there's lots of clues, both subtle and more obvious, that someone is struggling with their love threshold. A bonsai dream is a really good clue that someone has love threshold issues. In other words, they don't feel they deserve the real dream. If someone is in a relationship that to you is obviously unhealthy, good chance they've got some love threshold work to do. If someone is self-deprecating, that would be a very small clue. I'd become curious. When I have a client who's describing, themselves or what they want, and there's a lot of self-deprecation, I'm always like, my flag goes up, and I become really curious about it. There are even really small things, like when people have fillers like kinda, sorta. It's just a little bit of a tell. It's like in poker. It's a little bit of a tell that there's some underlying insecurity there. It's not always true, and I don't want to make a bigger thing out of it than it is. But what I'm saying is, as a coach, I'm listening for all of these things that might be clues, and then I become curious about them. Sometimes it's nothing. And sometimes it's, they're telling me a story, and there's all these fillers and self-deprecation and everything, and then when I ask and go deeper, I discovered that there's something there that's a wound or insecurity or something that's really holding them back. Allison.
I read a few years ago that women use just a lot more, the word just, and a lot of things to soften requests like that.
Yeah.
What was the one you said before the self-deprecating?
Yeah, bonsai dream. Bonsai dream, bad relationships, the silliness threshold is also often the first clue. Like when someone starts to tell me their real dream and they start laughing, it's like, if I could do anything I wanted, I'd quit my job and I'd just play guitar. And they laugh about it. There's almost always something really there. It might not be playing guitar, but it might be creativity or expression or something. It's a clue, again. So it's knowing what to listen for to then follow your curiosity. Okay? Okay. I have to use my notes for this because there's really so much that we could talk about, and obviously we want to talk about all of it. It also impacts your money. If you're not making the money you think you deserve, there's a good chance there's love threshold. By the way, I use the word deserve. If you're not making the money that you want, and I know all of you have heard this before, but I want to say it again, none of this is about money. I don't do anything for money. I get paid, but I don't do something because I'm going to get paid. I work with people that I want to work with, whether or not they can afford to pay me or not. And then there are people who pay me. So I'm financially supported. In fact, since I've been sort of creating this way, I've made more money than I've ever made in my life. But it's not about the money. It's about expressing my essence and serving and creating and having fun and creating community and all of that. That's why I do it. But if someone is having a hard time creating money, it's often because they don't feel they deserve it. So what does it mean to deserve anything? What does it mean to deserve something? How do you know if you deserve something? Do you deserve what you want? No. Here's how I think of it. Everybody here is worthy of love. Everybody here, the way I think of it is, everybody here is my spiritual equal. There's nobody in this room who has more or less right to be here than I do. We're all spiritual equals. We're all worthy in that sense. But we don't all deserve the same things. Deserve literally means to serve. If you want to create more, serve more, and then you'll deserve it. If you want to make more money, find a way to serve more, and you'll make more money. Now, you have to serve people in a way that's valuable to them, and you have to serve people who have money if you want to make a lot of money. And again, it's not about money, but it's just that's the sort of the economic reality of it, right? Somebody can't pay you if they don't have it. You might still deserve it. You might still be serving. But if you want more, if you want to create more love in your life, love more. And then you'll deserve it. Everybody is worthy of love, but not everybody deserves love. They're not out expressing love. They're not being loving. Jovic.
How exactly does that translate to a client, let's say many clients that I have had, where they're women and they're not being paid what their male counterparts are being paid?
Yes.
And I'm struggling with telling them to do more or be more or serve more.
Yeah.
In order to get paid more. Like that doesn't work.
The system is not perfect. In fact, it's imperfect. And it is absolutely true that women are not paid equally according to what they deserve. Women are often not paid what they deserve.
But I can't say to them, your answer is to then serve more. Because that translates into, what the hell do you mean I have to do more in order to...
Right.
And I see Michelle raising her hand and looking in at me, so...
It's really about asking more, right? I mean, when you look at the issue with many women, and it's not the entire problem, but it is certainly a big part of the problem, is that, there's tons of research out there on men negotiate much more, they ask for much more, and women tend to say, oh, thank you. And so it's about learning to understand what your real value is. It's about being able to make a business case for it, and not being ashamed to ask for money.
Yeah, I appreciate this question. You wanted us to bring our hardest questions.
Yes.
I need more meat around this idea of serving and like more understanding of the nuance of it, because it does sound very different for people who are educated in our system to be caretakers, to be selfless. The thing that I have landed on is, oh yeah,
have the mic?
I have done many rounds, is that it's not that they're not serving, or that I personally was not serving, but it wasn't my essence I was serving. I was serving a false self of what I thought would get me the respect in the way others had, because the system is set up to support them for that. And again, it's an imperfect situation, but I think the combo has to be serving more from essence is more effortless.
Yep.
It's like, oh, this is easy. But it's, if you can't understand that, then yes. So I have tap danced around the word be in service, serve,
Yep.
be generous, because 10 out of 10 female clients are like, what the fuck?
Yes.
I can't give any more.
Oh, well, you can hold on to that. So thank you for that. That's a really important distinction to understand, that generosity and service are not about being a martyr. They're not about giving to the point of resentment or burning yourself out, or if you're going to be more loving, you have to love yourself. You have to do self-care. You have to care for yourself. You have to respect yourself. If I'm going to work with someone, they have to respect themselves, the work, and me. If I'm working pro bono with somebody and they don't show up, I stop working with them. I don't just give, I don't just give if the person doesn't appreciate it. I don't sacrifice myself. Some of us, there's an idea that love is sacrifice. Yeah. I would sacrifice myself for Michelle. I probably wouldn't sacrifice myself for you. I love you, Vanessa, but I'm going to take care of myself, and you take care of yourself. We respect each other, and we respect what we do together. I don't give myself away to people who don't appreciate it. I give myself away to everybody, because I don't know who will appreciate it. I just give myself away. I want to give it all away. But if someone shows up and they don't appreciate it, then I don't have time for that. I've got to find the people who will receive it. I'm pouring this out, and if they don't receive it, or if they just take it, if they want to take it and they don't appreciate or respect what we're doing, then I don't have any need to be taken advantage of. I want to give generously. My sole criteria for whether or not I work with someone or how much they pay me is, do I feel generous? Whether someone is working with me pro bono and it's free, or someone is paying me $10,000 a month, which is my full fee for executive CEO client. The final criteria is, do I feel generous with this person? Do I just want to give? Or am I thinking about the fact that they're not paying me, or that they're, or what they're paying me, or whatever? As soon as I start thinking about that, I know it's not a good trade, regardless of the money. So to your point, Vanessa and Zovig, is you're right. If you're a woman and you're working hard and you're giving and you're sacrificing and you're not being paid what you deserve, then you're being disrespected. And I know it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not minimizing it. Like, that is a real problem in our society that I'm looking to you to work on, right? Like, and I'm doing my best by doing this. This is the form. This is my best form. But yes, it's then they're in an abusive relationship. And I saw Tatiana.
I just want to say that it's actually the men that need to do the work.
Yes.
Because it's the men who need to be coached
Yes.
to validate that the performance of women should be equally valued in the performance of your conversations.
Yes.
Coaching women does nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing in this whole thing, because they're asking, trust me, they're asking all the time. And the research is that when women ask for more, they're considered selfish,
they're seen as abrasive. All these things come back.
Yeah,
The men are not, the reason why they don't ask is because they've been given this feedback that they're abrasive, they're difficult, they're pushy, they're bitchy, right? That's the reason they don't ask. A lot of women, when they're negotiating with me, ask a lot, just as much as
I would
men.
say it's both, right? Like, I mean, I think it really is a dual problem. I absolutely, my
I have
practice.
been in many performance review conversations where they talk about men performing in a very different way than they talk about women.
Absolutely agree with you.
Women, it's always about behaviors and not getting along enough, and not, this one man doesn't like how she shows up, and the men are just, like, it's all objective performance criteria.
So I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah.
I totally agree that that's out there. What I will tell you is I've worked with many women who got much more than they ever would have by being pushed to ask for more, by being helped to create business cases, by being helped to go from, through the different ranks that they might not have done otherwise. So, like, there's the part that you can do, and there's the part that you can't do. But if the question is, as a coach, am I helpless? As a coach, you're not helpless. You can help people ask for more. You can help them construct that kind of a case. So, yes, absolutely. All the other problems you're talking about, absolutely there. What can we do? We can help women ask for more constructively.
I just tell them to find another job.
Hang on one second. Daisy, and I saw Daisy first, and then Zoe.
Hello? Oh, wow. Okay, so in Italy, they call women who are managers donna manager. It's sort of ubiquitous for bitch. So, for bitch. And I had to, in running my company where I hired a lot of women, I had to do a lot of development of the women who were terrified to go to the bank, or terrified. They were all really scared, and it's endemic in the culture. But once they see another woman doing it, they have someone to model. And I would march them down to the bank and tell the bank manager, look, I'm doing $1 million worth of business with this person. You better listen to her when she comes into the bank. So it's slow progress that just, I think, we are constantly chipping away. And it's like you have a tiny chisel, but you need to keep, for both men and women, because it's hard for us to see ourselves as equal and hard to change what's so endemic in cultures around the world. But it begins with loving both sides, and yeah. I think we should have a breakout session about that.
Tatiana, what you said, I'm in complete agreement with you, putting it on the person who is the victim of I don't like the word victim, but being impacted by the design of the system isn't fair. And there are too many women, myself included, who have to train ourselves to ask for what we want across the board. When I ask my clients, what do you want? I get blank stares. I get dead silence. I get confusion. I get I don't know, no one's ever asked me that before. And so I think I have had to learn how to articulate what I want in any situation. Money, in my intimate relationship with my husband, with friends, from Robert when I push back on things. I've had to learn how to, so I think no matter what we have, otherwise I'm out of business. Otherwise what am I doing by coaching women? So I think it's absolutely incumbent upon the men to make the space and to learn we're equal. And I do think, Michelle, yes, we need to learn to ask for what we want across the board, money included, and feel comfortable and hopefully not fear being ostracized as much, because that is a tough one to be up against. To know that you're going to be called those things. I've been called all of those things and more. And you gotta build thick skin and resilience, and it's hard. But I do think it has to come from both sides. And this is something that is this is why I get up in the morning. So I think all things are true at once.
Yeah.
I think in this case, all things are true at once. But I'm still, and it may take me some time to resolve the deserve means to serve more. In my head, I'm still thinking I have to do more. But I liked what Vanessa said.
Yeah.
Do more from your essence.
that seems to give me something to
Yeah.
to say to a client that's like, you're not fucking telling me to do more than I'm doing. You can't possibly be serious.
Let me clarify what I meant. First of all, I appreciate this conversation because I do recognize, I have also coached a lot of women, and I've done, one of the things I've done is a lot of presentation skills coaching with women. And what I've observed is how women show up and they tone down their power when they present. And so one of the things I try to do is get them to like embrace, express, like really take up room and all of that. And surprisingly, men, the biggest challenge with men is that when they stand up, they think they're supposed to be performing. And I can't tell you how many men who have told me for presentation skills, I want you to give me gravitas or some version of that. Like, I want you to teach me how, when I present, to get people to take me more seriously. What do I have to do? And you'll be talking with them and you're having this relaxed conversation, and then they stand up and they become a completely different person. But, so I acknowledge that this is a problem. It's not just women. I mean, yes, the problem that you're talking about is very real. But it's men too, it's all of us. It's all of us operating, it's all of us. Whoa. It's all of us operating from self-interest, status-seeking, scarcity, and survival. The reason men don't pay women what they deserve is because they believe in self-interest, status-seeking, scarcity, and survival. The reason white people don't pay people of color what they deserve is because they're operating from self-interest, status-seeking, scarcity, and survival. So,
And the reason the planet doesn't get what it deserves.
Exactly.
Because we are all operating.
we're all operating from that, and we're consuming the planet. I love that Patagonia has now made, I mean, amazing that Patagonia has now made Earth their sole stakeholder. Okay? So to me, that's the real work. Women, men, business, personal, whatever it is, that's all form. Not to minimize it in any way. But what is the essence of what we're doing? The essence of what I'm doing is I'm trying to help people create a life that reflects their essence, that's big enough for them to bring their value to the world, whatever that is, because whatever their essence is, it's valuable. So that, what you're talking about is an essence wounding as an adult. When someone doesn't pay a woman what she deserves, that's an essence wound. That's saying you're not good enough, you're not as valuable. That is trauma. So to say to someone, if you want more, then you have to deserve more, you have to serve more. If you're serving someone who doesn't respect you, that formula is not going to work. If you have a job and someone doesn't appreciate the contributions that you're making, that strategy will not work. On the other hand, if you're a coach or a solo entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, then that is a very good strategy. If you want to make more money as a coach, find a way to serve more. If you're an entrepreneur and you're doing a startup, find a way to create more value for the people that you think are your customers. Serve more, and you're more likely to be successful. Yes? Yeah. Jeremiah and then Virgie.
Kind of coming back to the serve and deserve thing.
Yes.
I think part of the confusion is service versus value.
Yeah.
Like increasing my service to you, you might not value it.
Yeah.
I have to increase the value received from my work.
Sure.
And
Yeah, when I say serve more, what I mean is create more value for people. Yeah. Virgie and then Daniel.
So, thinking about this conversation, I know we went to a really rich, but very huge digression, I think. But if the woman is not getting paid more,
And then telling them to serve more, even according to the essence, is not going to get them paid more. It's just going to lead to abuse. Then the ultimate solution is to walk away.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's just get that on the.
That's what I would do. Yeah. And yeah, no, absolutely. If you're in an abusive relationship, first of all, if you're in an abusive relationship, that's a clue there's love threshold work to do. You should walk away. You should.
When it's a business and that's your sole income, then it's kind of hard to walk away.
Yes.
If you don't have an alternative.
Yes, I said I'm not minimizing that, and it's a challenge. It's not easy to do that, and I wouldn't discount how challenging that is for somebody. Still, if there's no way to be respected and appreciated and treated fairly and so forth where you are, then you must leave. You must find a way to, that's your quest. That's your quest. And if we're in a relationship with that person, then our role as an ally is to support them in figuring out how they can do that, how to get out. Sorry, Daniel, you had your hand up, right? And, yeah, and then Ariel.
Your attitude of serving through generosity and gratitude and grace has, you were in my head a lot this week. Because the program that I got pulled into, I know how much they were paying a much more famous person to be 1 hour.
Yeah.
And I was fine with getting paid to do that for a workshop. And some light calls around some other parts of the program. When I showed up, they're like, so can you do this 2-hour session tomorrow with our whole staff and coach them to lead through these dialogues? I was like, sure, I'm here. Like, that seems reasonable. I'm happy to do that session with you all. And it was fun. And during that session, the head of the program was like, it was unclear. I was like, so who's going to be leading these? Like, is it going to be you or so-and-so? And they're like, well, we're wondering, like, could you lead that one?
Do you have a microphone? Is that
I don't know if I want to go on the record for this.
Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, but I didn't, if you're going to tell a story, we want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, being pulled in for a small piece and then showing up and saying, well, can you coach the whole team to help these dialogues that you've been lightly coaching us on happen? I said, sure. And during that session, they were like, well, I said, well, who's going to be leading the dialogue tomorrow? And she's like, well, could you lead that? And I was like, sure, I guess. And I was like, and how about the one the day after? I was like, it sounds like Chad could probably do that. And she's like, well, actually, I think it'd be better if it's really just your voice. Just, having a separate external authority would be so much better. Maybe you can do that one too. And so there was a part of me that is petty. Maybe that's part of my essence, pettiness, right? Right. Well, no. So Daisy, thank you for advocating on my behalf. I'm perfectly capable of doing so. So I was there, and I had negotiated a fee to be there. Yeah. And they were putting more on me. And I was just like, sure, I'll go with the flow. And so Daisy, your point of, I joked with them. I said, it sounds like I'm getting a promotion without getting a raise. Ha, ha, ha. But I didn't want to have that conversation. Now, maybe I could have. But honestly, I just thought, well, some slides need to get made. Yeah. I worked with the guy. I said, here's a wireframe. He did the final design. And I got to be on stage 5x more. But there was still a part of me that I had to do battle with. But I think I was just trying to channel you. I was like, I'm here and I want to serve as much as possible. And if we have the conversation about the next effort, Daisy, that's when I would say, hey, so by the way, like this is my fee for doing this kind of thing, right? Sure. If they'd said, hey, we'd like you to co-host 3 dialogues over a whole thing and be the MC, I would have charged differently. But in the moment, I wanted to serve with as much generosity and as little scarcity as possible in the moment.
Yeah. The only way to know whether or not that was a good idea is, did you feel generous? Did you feel generous? And so if you felt generous, you were giving. Now, if they then asked you to do more without paying you, I would not feel generous because I would feel like I was being taken advantage of. And that's what I'm talking about. There's a point at which I feel like, no, I'm actually being disrespected here. I loved working with you. I would love to work with you. It seems like we should have a conversation and agree on what I'm going to get paid for that. Yeah. And so at some point, I will get paid. But I don't, I never think about it. Like with my clients most of my clients had year-long commitments when my practice was more active. And other than the retainer they paid me, I just never thought about it. I did an offsite. We went to a thing in San Francisco, and I didn't charge anything for that, for their all-hands meeting. It's a relationship. They're paying me fairly. I feel generous. I suggest things that are more work for me because I want to be of service.
I just sort of felt like it felt like the equivalent of a 2-hour dream session.
So good.
They already flew me there. I was there, and rather than trying to have that negotiation, I just decided to see where the serendipity led.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, and you felt good about it. If you felt good about it,
I coached myself to let it go and to roll with it, and I feel pretty good about the way I coached myself, the way I thought Robert would coach me.
Hang on.
I coached myself.
Ariel's next, Daisy.
I did coach myself. I don't know if I did a good job, but
yeah. So Ariel and then Daisy, and then we do need to move on. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this, to deserve is to serve, but then what happens when you are working with women and telling them to do more? I'm just been kind of stewing on that for a minute.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that might be an if they were to say, like, what do you mean do more? Like, fuck this shit. But I wonder if that might be an opportunity to actually bring in triple loop learning. So it's not about doing more, but how might you think about serving differently, or how might you be different? So, what would it look like for serving not to be self-sacrificing or betraying yourself? How would it be to serve from essence? Anyway, I was just thinking about that as like a way.
Thanks for that, Ariel. Self-sacrifice is not, to my mind, is not real service. And by the way, I don't tell women they need to do more unless they're a coach or an entrepreneur. And then I may say, look, if you're not creating the practice you want, are you having dream sessions? Are you putting yourself out there? That's what I mean by doing more. I don't mean, sacrificing yourself for some boss. I mean doing the work. That's what I mean when I say do more. If someone is employed and their boss isn't treating them fairly, I don't say do more. I say find a way to get your boss to treat you fairly, or find a way to leave. Let's go on a quest to create your ideal job, if that's what it is that they want. Daisy, and then we'll move on.
I think I can put it in the parking lot. I just come from a product background, so the product costs X.
Yeah.
And every time you buy that product, it costs X. So if somebody asks me for an additional 2 hours, I assume they know they're going to get a bill. I mean, so that's confusing to me because I love what you're saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to just put it in the parking lot. Or I'd love to have a breakout session with some of the women here to talk about different ways to negotiate money, I guess.
So thanks, Daisy. And so I'm just going to give a short answer for what that's worth, and if you want to talk about it more at some point, we can, maybe tomorrow. But to me, I'm not a product. I'm a person. I'm not selling a product. I'm creating a relationship. And so it is different. I'm not selling widgets. I'm selling people back to themselves. I'm selling people their dreams back to themselves so that they'll believe in themselves. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute, because that's what we do to help the person with their love threshold. But so there's, to me, the most important distinction to get if you are some kind of If you are a person who is in service to other people, meaning you're creating value for people, not sacrificing yourself, you're creating value. To me, the difference is you can show up for that as a transaction or a relationship. A transaction is, I'm going to give you X and you're going to pay me Y. A relationship is, we're going to have an agreement of an exchange of value or commitment if it's pro bono, and then I'm going to just give. I'm going to just serve you. I'm going to try to create as much value as I can. And you're going to meet me in that relationship by showing up and respecting me, the work, and yourself. And so I never want to be on the clock. I never watch the clock. To me, that's my idea of a job what was the question earlier? And Zeke said he'd be a stockbroker. I would never want to be a lawyer. I'd never want to be, billing in 5-minute increments or whatever it is. I'm never on the clock with a client. Sana.
So when you don't feel generous with someone,
Yep.
how do you know if it's because something on the other person, let's say they don't appreciate the work, or is it that you're not coming from a place of service?
If I don't feel generous, the first thing I ask myself is, I don't feel generous. Why don't I feel generous? It's usually because the person is not showing up. If it's pro bono, it's because the person isn't showing up. And by showing up, I mean they're keeping their agreements, they're doing the work, they're engaged, they're really working with it. We're creating something. And if they're not showing up, then I don't feel generous because I feel like I'd rather serve somebody who shows up, because there is a limit to me. If they're paying me, really it pretty much comes down to, are they showing up? Do I love it? Is this a client? Is this my ideal client? Do I love working with them? Do I love what they're about? Do I love what they're creating? Do they show up? Do they meet me? Are they coachable? Do they accept the challenge? Are they doing the work? Then I feel generous. If they're doing all that and I don't feel generous, it's probably because there's something about them I just don't like. And then I just, I find a way to, that hasn't happened in a while.
I just got this sense as you were sharing that in a way is it about that you actually have more energy, like they're contributing to you through how they're showing up, and so you end up being fed and nourished, and you're getting more.
I feel full. I love my work. I love what I do. I could stay up all night. I'm worried about you guys. I could stay up all night, And again, I never hold anything back. My philosophy is don't think I'm going to hold something back so I have something else to sell you. No. I give you everything. I'm not worried about running out of value because I'm creating from my essence. There's always more there. Vanessa. Yeah.
I just want to complete with, I think one of the things that hasn't been explicitly named in the conversation about women is that I would say generally women are chronically under-supported and taking care of kids and aging parents and community, and so the level of service is already being spread way too thin. So I think that's an interesting dynamic, and maybe thinking serving deeper and being contributed to in a way that they're getting fed.
Yeah, all of that is true. Yes to all of that. Vanessa.
I think the word of more of anything is not really serving this conversation and has hindered me. And what it really, I think, is happening is you're saying, do less scarcity, do less survival, do less self-interest, do less seeking, so that you then have space to be abundant, generous, etc., etc. And so what I wrote here was be generous with your essence and to your essence. Your essence self. Do whatever it takes so your essence can be shared and have it be valued.
Yes.
Do less for us and invite the experience of the East.
Yes. Beautifully said.
Can you put that on the
I know, can you put that
Do, yeah.
notes on the?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you can start on either side, because I was operating from this. Oh.
I mean, I think you can start from either side and like, because I think an essential ingredient here is like to have your essence be valued
Yes.
and to be generous to your essence self. Like
Yes.
the first relationship of generosity is with self.
Mhm.
And I think I've been thinking about it as like, gotta generous myself all over with my essence-y thing. Like, and that's not
Yeah.
what you're getting at. And I think it's just like do
No.
more blah 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 was the entry into I'm tapped out already on other areas. And I think I would add a fifth S. I mean, I know self-sacrifice is encompassed in these other areas, but I think it is a
Yeah.
piece that is for people who have been enculturated.
Self-sacrifice is a survival strategy.
Right. But I think it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a lot of
that-
conversations
yeah.
about self-sacrifice with
Yeah.
my clients.
Yeah. Yes, everything you said is really good. And I especially like the idea of being kind to your essence, being generous with your essence. How well do you support yourself and your interests and things like that? It's like, don't deprive yourself either. Like, be generous with yourself. Self-care is important, and self-care it's physical, it's wellness, but it's also the care of supporting yourself to pursue the things that you really care about and are interested
Your essence
in,
care.
and so forth. Your essence care, yes. Essence care. I can see a whole line of essence care products. Yes. I'm sure Daisy is working on it already. There will be essence products. Yes. Hang on a second. Let's focus and let's pass the mic around because I don't want to miss this.
I've been witness to this discussion. I never thought of the service question as being. It's so interesting. Until this evening, I never thought of the service question being about doing more work. I always ask the question, how do you want to be of service? Because I actually think oftentimes with my coaching clients, that leads them to learn to say no to a lot of the work they're taking on. So it's not, you need to do more, you have to do more service. It's about what is your highest value service and what's the gap right now between that, what you want, what your highest value is in this company, in this situation, and what you're doing now. Because I think often with that question, there's an aha moment of I'm not serving anyone by working 10-hour days, 12-hour days, doing so much. And then having them track what percentage of my day am I truly of service and what percentage of my day am I running around like a hamster trying to please everyone. That to me feels really different, and that's a trap a lot of women and men, frankly, fall into, thinking they need to perform and that performing is doing more. It's often not doing more, performing and succeeding. It's about doing the right work, and the right work is your essence service work.
It's the second essence question. Are you serving in a way, is this your best way of serving congruent with your essence?
Yeah.
That's what it's really about. Thank you. Igor.
What a rich discussion. I'm just thinking about some situations I've been in, and this has come up, Vanessa, I think we talked about this a little bit, is if a client asks me, let me put it this way, I got coached by someone once, and I said, Dropbox has asked me to do a free demo with a group of 15 people, and they say they have no budget, and they just want me to come and do it. And I said, there's no way I'm going to do that. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. And he said, you want them as a client. They're not willing to hire you right now. What have you got to lose? Why don't you try it and see if you get a result and use that as a learning experience? So I did that. So that was good coaching because it got me out of feeling like a victim and not wanting to be abused, right, which is a past experience. And so it created an opening. And I did it, and but what I did is I said, I have certain criteria. We have to have some decision makers in the room, at least one member of your executive team. It needs to last 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I want to do a little song and dance about my company for 10 minutes at the end. And they said yes. So I did it, and before I left the room, they said, would you please do some work with our executives? And so that was it was a huge learning for me. Now, I'm not saying I will always be in such a receptive, but I'm starting to think about that again as a way of getting back in the game. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, only you know whether you're being taken advantage of. If you feel generous, you're generous. And something like that is a great way to create serendipity, because you don't know who's in the room, and you don't know where they're going to be a year from now, and you don't know what their budget is going to be, and what are you going to do instead? Sit home and feel sorry for yourself. So that's good generosity. Okay. I appreciate that there was a lot of energy around this conversation, and I'm happy we had it, because I want to take all of this deeper. I know that many of you know a lot of the basic stuff here that I'm talking about. So I think this was valuable, and I invite you to keep reflecting on it and challenging it, because you have to arrive at what works for you and feels like it's helping you move toward. Remember, it's not just essence, it's abundance. And abundance comes before service. You have to create a life where you feel abundant. I feel so abundant that I just don't think about some of the things you talked about. I am overflowing with this stuff. I just want to give it away. I'm not entirely sure how I got here, but this is where I am. I got here in part by gratitude. You know, when I was seriously depressed, I realized how little I appreciated my life and how much I had. Not just materially, but how many people loved me, and you know, gifts that I had that I wasn't giving, you know, my essence that I wasn't expressing. And so I felt profound gratitude. And then, you know, I read somewhere, if you're depressed, help somebody. And that's really what got me started. I thought, what can I do that would be helpful to somebody? And all I knew was how to have conversations. And so I just started coaching pro bono. So, you know, for a year, 90%, the first year, 90% of the work I did was pro bono or extremely, extremely low bono. I just tried to help people. And I never thought about what I would get in return. What I thought about was, I don't really believe it yet. I don't believe that I can create value as a coach doing this kind of stuff. You know, I was a skills-based transactional coach. I would do presentation skills or management skills or whatever. I didn't really believe that I could help somebody have the kind of personal transformation that mattered to me. And I didn't believe that I could show up as myself and people, you know, executives wouldn't think I was crazy or too, you know, weird or whatever. And so I had to become the person, I had to embrace the identity of someone who could do that. And then I had to get good at it, because I wasn't that good, and I'm still learning. And I created what Daniel loves to call a serendipity engine. I created a lot of contacts, a lot of people who were talking about what I was doing, and that created my practice. So.
And you're really congruent with your essence. And I think it's like when you make art sometimes and you're in your flow. And I really feel that you are in your flow. This is your voice, it's your legacy. And I think when anybody touches on that aspect,
And now, my first company absolutely touched on that, and I haven't gotten back to it. So sometimes you get into our groove, and it's really unique, special, like your channel.
So, I mean, the reason I say all of this is that this is really what I mean by service. What I mean is create value from your essence. Find the people who appreciate and respect what you do and create as much value as you can from your essence and give yourself away. And conduct that experiment. Go on that quest, conduct that experiment. Don't believe me, just try it and see what results you get. Okay? So thank you. We're going to take a break. When we come back, believe it or not, we're actually going to talk about the love threshold. Okay? So go ahead, take 10 minutes, whatever your watch says. We're going to get started again in 10 minutes. Thank you. Let's talk about love. Is that okay? Is that okay? You're tired of talking about love by now, yeah. Okay. So I really loved watching Michelle this afternoon. Well, I really love watching Michelle, but I just loved watching Michelle, and I'm trying to remember the thing you said about Michelle was talking about love, and she said, there's I love you, and there's I love you, and I love you, and I love you, and I love you, right? Like there's different kinds of love. So when we say, I love my client, what kind of love are we talking about? Creepy love. Creepy love? Okay.
The creepy, gropey kind she's talking about.
Oh, okay. The creepy, gropey kind, yeah. So, I mean, if you're serving more, you deserve more, right? All right. So what does it mean to love a client?
It means to feel fed by your interactions with them, and to feel fulfilled, and to feel connected, and to feel purpose.
Okay, that's what it feels like when a client loves you. Right? You feel fed.
Well, I think feeling fed by an interaction is feeling excited. It's feeling inspired. It's feeling motivated.
Yeah, sorry. You want to lower your mask? What happened to them? Here we go. Thank you.
I think feeling fed by a client is feeling inspired, feeling motivated, feeling, what else did I say? What? Connected, educated, lifted up, like, I didn't realize I knew this kind of thing. I think all that is feeling fed too.
So I think all of that is great, but I think that's why you love your client.
Okay.
What does it mean to love a client? Ernest.
This reminds me of the conversation that Ariel and I had a little bit. I messed up. Ariel and I had a little bit earlier, and it came from this conversation I had with someone else that they said love is an act and like a verb, and it's a thing that you do. So there's a few things that came to mind. Is first of all, where is this when you have a conversation with them, where is it coming from? Where am I coming from? If I'm coming from love, I'll show up differently.
Okay.
Specifically, if I were to make it more tactical, one thing that popped into my mind was to believe in them sometimes more than they believe in themselves, and that could be an act of love.
Okay.
Would be an expression of that, and that's the way that I look at it.
Yeah. So that would be an act of love. That would be an expression of love. Great. Thanks, Ernest. Lots of hands are good.
I was thinking just to be fully accepting, and as they're talking, I think very visually. I have this visual of a flower opening constantly, and just being fascinated by whatever they're offering in the moment.
Yeah, I love that. Did you all see the flowers blooming when you arrived here yesterday, or did I already stop that video? So there was a video of just flowers blooming, in slow motion over and over, like a 2-hour video on loop of just flowers blooming.
It was gorgeous.
It was gorgeous. Thank you. Gorgeous. Yeah, that's how I feel about grace, which we're going to talk about Sunday morning. Okay, where are we? Michelle has the mic, and there were lots of hands over here. Who? I want good for you. Yes. Yes. Yes.
The Italians, when they say I love you, they say ti voglio bene, which literally translates as I want good for you.
Yes.
And that feels like something for my client as well as all people.
So Daisy actually kind of said what I was going to say, which is, to me, love is benevolent care for well-being. It's well-wishing. I love my clients and I wish them well. Like, I really wish them well. And when I'm feeling that, when I'm feeling like I just love this person, I just really wish them well, I feel generous. And so, some version of that. And, if there are other people who want to add to that, I saw some other hands. If you still want to add something, it's great.
I'll just say, to me, it's like when you prayer hands, it's like I see the divine in you. So for me, it's like I see them as me. And so that's just an expression of love for all.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. And Greg?
I think it's really similar to the way I look at it, which is what I think is meta. I want for them the same success, happiness, joy, serenity, peace, abundance that I want for myself.
Yep.
So it's a raising of my concern and wants for them to the same level of concern that I want for my own self.
Great. So Greg, then that raises another question, which is, what does it mean to love yourself? Yes. Isabel. Oh, sorry. Wherever you were going first, and then Isabella. Did someone else have a hand up over there? Okay, Isabella, right here.
For me, is to accept yourself for who you are.
Okay, to accept yourself for who you are. What else? Sana. Lower your mask so we can.
To be okay with it all.
To be okay with
the
it all.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
The good, the bad, the ugly. There was.
You guys are intentionally going back and forth across the room.
There was something I saw on Instagram, and I wish I could give credit to whoever wrote it. But what it said was, "Tell me every terrible thing you've ever done, and let me love you anyway." In a way, that's what we do as coaches. Yeah, Ernest.
Sometimes I think about it from the sense of how would I react if I was being towards my daughter.
Yeah.
And then it's a big mindset shift to do that for myself, and it doesn't come easily, but that's one of the ways that I look at it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. What else? So there's no one right answer here. I'm just inviting you to think about it. The way I think about loving yourself is a kind of self-rightness. In other words, congruence, and the courage to live in a way that supports you being your true self in the world. Like, you're willing to defend your right to be yourself. It's the opposite of self-esteem. Self-esteem is bolstering yourself. It's self-interest, status seeking, scarcity and survival. It's not, from my perspective, it isn't really self-rightness or the courage to create from your essence. And where do we get this idea? How do we arrive? We talked earlier about, sort of how do we get to the false self? How do we lose touch with our essence? And there's also a way, like we don't lose complete, most of us don't lose complete touch with it. We do get some support for our essence, and we can get it back. And we do that by having the courage to create from our essence. We do it by having the courage to go on a quest and to sort of reconnect with our essence and nurture that relationship that we have. But one of the ways that we get it when we're younger is what are called good mother and good father messages. So if you were fortunate enough to have parents who were doing the best that they could, and nobody's perfect even if they're doing the best that they can, they were giving you good mother and good father messages. And those messages are things like, I see you. I believe in you. You're worthwhile. And without having any idea about this, I'm fairly certain that everybody in this room does that with their clients. Thank you. I'm fairly certain that everybody in this room does this with their clients. What we essentially do, the meta message, if you will, of the conversations we're having with our clients, inviting them to dream their real dream and inviting them to get in conversation with their essence and reflecting their essence back to them as we see it and inviting them to go deeper, is what we're saying is, I see you. You're worthwhile. I believe in you. You're capable. When you tell me you have a dream, I believe you. And I won't forget it. And if you forget it, I'm going to remind you. And the dream may change, but I'm an ally for you. I believe in you and I'll support you. Variations of that. Those are good, affirming messages to communicate. And we don't necessarily have to say any of those words, but that's what we're doing by inviting them. That's what we're doing by inviting them to dream and encouraging them and provoking them at times and challenging them and, really supporting them to find their true dream. We're saying it's worthwhile and you can do it. Who do you think you are? I think you're someone who can create that. That's what we're communicating. So we talked earlier, and I had you do a little bit of rapid journaling about, I asked you what made you cry when you were a kid, and I asked you, what messages did you get and things like that. I'm going to invite you to do some reflecting on what were the messages that you wanted that you didn't get. Instead of, you're too big for your britches, or who do you think you are, what did you want to hear? And while you're doing that, I'm going to pass out some cards. And I'd like you to write them on an index card. And the swinging mic will swing. Take one and pass them around. Yeah. So I want you to, I'll fix the swinging mic. Sorry? One? Yeah, you should just need one. You can take more than one if you want, as long as everybody gets one. Thanks. You can just set them on a chair. It's fine. So I want you to think just in general terms, what was it you wanted to hear? What were the messages that would have affirmed your essence? It doesn't matter how old you were, or when in your life, or who from, but just what were the life-affirming messages that you wanted to hear? I mean, I've framed it as sort of good mother, good father messages, but you might think about a relationship you were in where you wanted more support and you didn't get it. What were the affirming messages you wanted to hear that you didn't get? We talked about what you did hear that wasn't helpful. What would be helpful to to you? Sorry? If you need more than one, take more than one. Yeah. Oh, no, not one per index card. I'm sorry. Just write on the index card. Sorry. So you can have as many as you can fit on the index card, and if you need another index card, Michelle will bring you another index card. Yes. The reason for the index card is I'm going to invite you to, shortly, to find a partner, someone that you feel most comfortable with here. So you've had an opportunity, many of you already know each other, but you've also had opportunities to connect. Someone that you would feel comfortable sharing this with, because we're going to just do an exercise around this. Okay? So the reason for the card is so you can give it to the other person.
And you said it could be from our parents, but it could have also been.
Yeah. It might have been some other caretaker or another relationship where the person sort of held you down or gave you negative messages. What was it you wanted to hear in that relationship?
But when we were young.
Yeah, I mean, usually these messages are formative because we got them early, and so that's what created the disconnect. So what we want to do is give you an opportunity to heal that disconnect and to think about what was it that you really wanted to hear. So the invitation, in just a minute, is to find someone that you feel comfortable sharing this with. And then the two of you will go find a place somewhere in the room. And someone will be on the receiving end first. And so you'll give your partner your card, and then you're going to get comfortable in whatever way is comfortable for you. You might sit facing the other person, you might sit back to back, you might lie down with a pillow and a blanket, you might put your head in their lap if you're comfortable doing that and they're comfortable doing that. Whatever makes you feel comfortable to just receive these messages. They're just gonna slowly read these messages to you that you've always wanted to hear. And you can take some time with this, and you can read a little bit slowly and let yourself absorb this. And just see what the experience is like for you. I'm going to actually give you about 10 minutes to do this so that you can be spacious with it. This is not like a task. Okay? No, 10 minutes for each person. Yes. Oh, sorry, 10 minutes for each person, yes. Yeah. I'm sorry? That's a long time? Okay, how much time do you want? 5 minutes? Okay. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this. Per person. Per person. And don't try to get more time. 5 minutes per person, that's it. Okay. So 5 minutes per person. And I'll give you 5 minutes. I'll let you know when it's time to switch. Okay?
The first few parts of it they felt overwhelming. But as I was able and listen and embody, I felt like I was actually repatterning in some way, to the point where I heard those words and I could actually believe them and embody them. And I started smiling. And it just felt like a full circle of sadness to joy, almost. So, yeah, it was powerful.
Kind of similar, but as you were talking, I could just see myself as a boy and projecting, like through my mother's voice, And then, some of the things I wrote were the things that I say to my boys that I wanted to be said. And so just as hearing that, I realized I've said that a lot, but I'd never heard it back. And just how powerful that was for me just brought me to tears, just deeply connected. It was a beautiful exercise.
Jesse's fantastic as a voiceover, but what I didn't expect was Jesse read what I wrote word for word, and he freestyled on top of it. So like he captured the essence of it, and he added so much embellishment of like other things a parent would say if they also believed that single statement. It was powerful. Very similar thoughts as many people, but what it felt like was a massage. It felt like water on a like very parched or dry earth. It was really soothing. I am used to telling myself a lot of my self-talk has already aligned with that. It felt very different to hear it from another person. So much to the point where I was thinking, wow, like I should definitely share this with my future partner. Like they should know this about me because how nourishing it feels, but how little I've gotten it from anyone other than myself. Literally no one has ever said that to me except for Jesse. So very powerful, very powerful. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, it felt like an unwinding, like there's just some tight place in me holding, like waiting to hear these things, and just went back to a really young age, and I could feel something sort of unwinding inside me. And the element of touch actually really helped also.
It's interesting that, I mean, a couple of things that I wrote were statements, but many of them were questions. And similar to what Brandon said, like, I think I've got my self-care, like my self-talk handled. But as I was listening to these, I realized I never ask myself these questions. And then at the end, I wanted to go back because I was telling Isabella one thing I wanted to say that I didn't was, here's some money and you don't have to pay me back. Just wanted her to say that over and over again. But yeah, and I just realized that. I didn't even realize it while it was happening. It was just like just now as I was sitting here. I never say this stuff to myself. So.
I was really imagining my mom saying these things to me as a small child, and it was so incredible to receive it. And I did feel the ones that were harder for me to believe or to receive, and I really have been in a deep conversation a lot with my mom and my dad, who've been separated since I was 10 months old, but about just layers upon layers of kind of reworking my relationship with them. And I really thought, I'm going to ask them to say these things to me. And I feel really excited about that. Right?
That's great.
And they're alive. I have that opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Sahai. Jeremiah.
I guess I'm the odd one out, but I figure I'll share this in case anyone else felt it. Like I heard all the words, but I heard a lot of really nice words when I was a kid, and it made me realize that my love threshold might be more environmental and physical than verbal. Like I did, just realizing like sort of hits different, and but it made me aware of that, which I wasn't aware of before.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Was someone over here? Or was there someone over here? No? Oh, you were just, okay. I warned you. It's like an auction. Okay. Good. Who would be willing to share some of the messages that you wrote for yourself? Isabella?
Are you guys ready on the crying to go for a crying session? I love you. You can accomplish anything you can imagine, and I'll be here to support you no matter what. Can you read it?
You are enough. You don't need to prove anything to anyone as long as you believe in it.
Thank you.
Mama says.
Thank you, Isabella. There's someone, Doug and then Sai.
I love you for exactly who you are. I'm here to support you on your life journey. I'm here to help you discover who you are. You don't have to do anything to be loved by me. I'm on Team Doug. It's okay to feel the way you feel.
That's great. Thanks, Doug.
You can do anything. I so believe in you. I am here for you. I have got your back. I see you. What do you really need right now? What do you need? How can I support you? Please tell me how you are feeling.
Thank you, Sai. Greg.
So I'm just going to read two of them. First one, your weight and appearance are exactly right and totally lovable. I love you. Second one, your feelings make sense and are important, and how you feel matters to me, and let me feel them with you.
Thanks, Greg.
I trust you to know what's right for you. I respect your beliefs as sacred to you, even when they differ from mine. Your adventuresome spirit is beautiful. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You are full of integrity.
Thank you, Rebecca. Can you see that it might be powerful to communicate some of these messages to your clients? Maybe not, I'm on Team Doug, but maybe not all the messages. But there's some really powerful messages here that I think most people would respond to. Some are very individual, and some are, you are enough. I want to know how you feel. These are important messages that we communicate as coaches. We create a space where people don't have to solve the problem that no longer exists. We can be a safe space for people to do this work, for whatever work they need to do for themselves.
Yeah, there's just one thing I wanted to say. If you wonder what the secret of our relationship is, one of the real secrets is that we do tell each other these things all the time, not because we ever wrote down what we wanted to hear, but Robert by nature is incredibly good at telling me more times a day than I can count how wonderful I am, how much he loves me, all of the things that everybody always wants to hear. And I think one of the things that has always been amazing about our relationship for both of us is that we can show up 110% who we are. I mean, our essence is right there all the time. And all of it is not always as beautiful as we might think, but we are able to show up 110% and still get those messages every day. Because when we do have that moment when we're stepping on eggshells, we don't lash out, we don't get angry, we don't do all of that stuff. We say, hey, we've got to sit on the couch. We've got to make some eye contact. We've got to figure it out. The problem goes on the table, and we both look at it and try to figure it out. So all of that stuff is what makes for a really stellar relationship. Just saying.
And eye contact every morning. Before we get out of bed, we make eye contact with each other. And if Michelle usually wakes up before I do, and if she gets out of bed, we go back to bed to make eye contact.
She's already in bed. I go back.
Well, she goes back to bed. Yeah. Greg.
So through our coaching conversations, we create the space, have the conversations, identify the love threshold as a driver of some barrier in one of our clients' lives. My thinking around how to process that and heal that and overcome that or replace it, whatever the right verb is it takes a lot of work, like a lot of grieving as a probably prerequisite, and then the restoration of the beliefs that weren't instilled by the parents, that they are lovable, that they are good enough, that they are sufficient, they are deserving, all the things. I have a belief that I'm willing to own as a belief that takes months of like intense, serious investigation, introspection work. So here we are as coaches, and I don't hold that's my specialty, or that I have the psychological training. I mean, I have some of it, but not nearly enough to do that work. So here we are in our coaching conversation and journey with our clients. We've identified the love threshold. Where do we go from there? What do we do if we believe this is at the driving source of what's preventing our clients from getting what they want? I'm feeling a little bit incomplete. Okay. It's like, where to go from here?
So there are a lot of different strategies and things that we can do with someone, and it's going to be very bespoke, right? It's going to be very individual to the person that you're working with and where they are and what they present. But one of the most important things you can do is what we just talked about. I mean, maybe you're not going to have your client, pull out a pillow and lie down and all of that. But what we can do is we can give them the messages. We're already doing it. You may not even say the words, but when you invite someone to go on a quest and you invite someone to dream, you're already saying that they're lovable, that they're worthy, that they are capable, that you believe in them, you see them. When you have an essence conversation, you're saying, I see you, here's what I see. And if it resonates with them, then they feel seen. And that is healing. So these are, being able to have an essence conversation with someone and being able to communicate these kinds of messages that you've communicated to each other. Again, maybe not in so many words, but just in the way you're showing up and the way you're encouraging them to talk about their dreams and the way you're telling them that you believe in them and that it's possible, and you're inviting them to dream the real dream instead of a bonsai dream. All of that is love threshold work. Okay. One of the most important things that you do is your presence. Or do. One of the most important things that you be is the host. You hold a space. We've been talking about form. That part of our work is to create a big enough form that's spacious enough for us to bring more and more and more of ourselves to. But that's also what you do as a coach for your clients. You create a space that's big enough that they can bring all of themselves to, because most of the spaces, and by space I mean, relationships and conversations that they have in their life are all constricted. They're all bottles. There are things that you're allowed to talk about and other things that you're not allowed to talk about. In most romantic relationships, there are certain things that you talk about and certain things that you just don't bring up. On most teams, there are things that we talk about as a team, and then we have unspeakables. Things that we're just not allowed to talk about as a team. Anyone who's worked with teams knows exactly what I'm talking about. So the coaching conversation is a conversation, that's the first agreement I ask all of my clients to make, all in. Everything is on the table. We can talk about anything here. Anything. I may not be able to help you with anything, like we were talking about earlier. They may bring something up and I don't know what to say that's helpful. But they can bring up anything. And so that also is part of healing the love threshold. Because they don't have to pretend. They don't have to make something up. They don't have to make themselves up to be in relationship with you as a coach. They can bring their essence, or they can bring their pain, they can bring their wound, and we won't judge them for that. And if they bring us their dream, we don't say, "Who do you think you are?" And so all of that is love threshold work. Is that helpful? Yeah. Thanks, Greg. Yeah.
Kind of on the point that Greg was bringing up, a thing I think I may have misunderstood this, but here's how I've been interpreting it and using it, which is telling clients that not telling, we go through the whole coaching part, but making them aware that the main thing that holds them back is their ability to generate love internally. And then kicking off, helping them a little bit, but then saying, this is a fire you need to learn how to stoke. Yeah. And just every day try to figure out, can I generate more love for myself than I did yesterday? And that seems to help let them do it on their own, instead of having, I like the words of affirmation, but I don't want to make them dependent on me.
Sure. Yes, and they're not dependent on you for those words, because they're out there creating and doing the work. But I love the idea of that's a fire you have to stoke. That's great. But it also isn't just about loving yourself. The love threshold is also about doing the work so that you can express more love. I mean, part of the love threshold work is learning how to love, learning how not to hold your love back. To be able to give love is part of that healing. So, yeah, thanks for that, Jeremiah. Tsahai.
Do you actually teach your clients this? Do you actually lead them through this, asking them what they didn't get to hear that they wanted to hear, and then telling it to them?
No. I just listen for what they want to hear, and I tell them. I do tell clients that everybody needs your love. I tell CEOs, listen, the most important thing I can tell you is everybody needs your love. Because half of the problems they come to me with are problems with their team. And I say, look, if you really want to work on that, the first thing you need to understand is that person needs your love. And they need your love and attention, and and then there may be other things, practical things and so forth they need to do, but everybody needs your love. Yeah, Isabel.
I don't really have a coaching question. I just have an acknowledgement and, I don't know, maybe an affirmation. Coming from my background and from what I'm dealing with, seeing the two of you tonight and hearing your story, it brings me hope that what we seek from a very young age, it does exist. There is the perfect romance. As a very romantic person, I gave up a long time ago because life is just fucked up and you can't help it. But what I saw tonight, and I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for sharing that with me and all of us, because there is so much love in this room, but what you guys have, it really restored the hope in my heart. Then there is really, it does exist. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you. And I want to say again, it's it's a creation, right? Like that's the thing I want to remind you all the time is that people always think, oh, you guys are so lucky. No, it's a creation. And you too, anyone here can create this. You need a co-creator. Yeah? You need a co-creator, but you don't need to find the perfect person. You need to find a good co-creator.
I don't want to disillusion you in any way, but I'm actually not perfect. And believe it or not, Michelle is not perfect, but we embrace it. We love it. There are things that Michelle does that annoy me, and I just take it as my spiritual practice. No, and I mean that sincerely. It's like, it's kind of annoying that she's right all the time. But I take that as spiritual practice. I can be more humble, and I can be more patient, and I can. No, but sincerely, the reason I say this is just that I know a lot of people who are looking for this kind of relationship, and then they see that someone is not perfect. They don't let you have your essence all the time, because sometimes expressing their essence bumps up against your essence. It's like we're always navigating. But the thing that I know about Michelle is that I trust completely that she's always well-intentioned. And Michelle knows that if I do something that upsets her or hurts her, her first story about it is, I know he's well-intentioned, so there's something I don't understand, and so I'm perplexed. And that's why we go to the couch, and we talk about it.
There's an article online which you can get to through my website, sexloveandleadership.com, or you can go to Medium and just look up Fighting the One You Love. Yeah. And that pretty much tells you my entire philosophy on life.
It's
Fighting
a great.
The One You Love.
Yeah, it is a great post. Who was it? Someone walking back from lunch. Was it Cookie or Tsahai? I can't remember who it was. Someone asked me, how did you know that Michelle was the one? Cookie, yes. I thought it was Cookie. Do you want the origin story? Well, here's how I knew that Michelle was the one. Our first date was a coffee date. Our second date, she invited me to dinner with some of her best friends that she's known all her life. And I forget exactly the way she said it, but she was something like, if you're up for it, or if that doesn't scare you, or something. I forget the words. But I thought, am I up for it? I'm game. So I went there for dinner, and I saw the way she was with her friends. I thought, wow, she is really a great friend. I want to be in a relationship with someone who's my best friend. I want to be in a relationship with someone who can be a real partner in my life. And then, as our relationship developed, we met on September 14th. It was our 5-year anniversary the day before yesterday. I mean, it feels like 50. And I say that in a good way, And it
feels that way because we have spent so much time together over all this time, and that we really always pretty much want to be together.
Yeah. And we also do a lot of questions. Michelle created a question deck, 300 questions, and we probably went through those in the first month. We do questions every time we sit down to eat, or we'd be in the car driving or something. We would do questions, and so I feel like I've known her forever, because we've had conversations that it takes people 50 years to have. But the other thing was we met on September 14th, and then on November 14th. Something like that, 14th, 17th, I can't remember. I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I barely knew Michelle 2 months. And when I got the news, she said, I think you should move in with me. You might need some help. And I said, listen, I wouldn't blame you if you just called this whole thing off right now. And she said, you're my person. So it is possible. Never give up hope for that. There's someone for everyone somewhere. You just have to find them. And the way you find them is you optimize for serendipity. I mean, truly. I'll tell a short story about this, and then we'll start wrapping up. No, I'm telling the spreadsheet story. You want to tell the origin story? Okay. This will take a minute, and then. Are you good? Do you need a bedtime story? This is the bedtime story. There are a few people here from Hive, which was a leadership conference that was held several times, and I took it as a participant early in 2016, and then I volunteered 5 or 6 times to lead groups. It was a much bigger conference. There were 100, 150, 120, 100, some people each time. And so I led a group. Jesse in the back room led a group. Brandon led a group. Alex led a group. That's how we all know each other. And so in 2016, I led 4 or 5 of these groups. One of the things I don't know that they all know is that year was the worst year of my life. I mean, I was seriously depressed to the point of being suicidal while I was leading those groups at Hive. But one of the things that they did at Hive is there was a man named Tom Chi who used to be at Google X, and he would give a presentation every time they had the conference. And one of the things that he would talk about is if you do something once and it has a 5% chance of success, then if you do it 20 times, it has a, 64% chance of success. And if you do it 50 times, it has a 92% chance of success. And so I heard this pitch 5 or 6 times. And when I was ready to start looking for a beloved, I thought, if I go on 50 dates, I have a 92% chance of finding my beloved. So I literally started a spreadsheet. I made 2 commitments to myself. The first commitment was I was going to go on 50 dates before I got discouraged. And the second commitment I made to myself is I'm going to show up to the best of my ability fully as myself. I talked about this earlier. So that if we did get into a relationship, we wouldn't wake up 3 months later or 6 months later and say, who are you? You're not who I thought you were. And so I did. And I think Michelle was number 37 or 38. I went on one more date after I met Michelle because she was pretty busy. It took a while before our second date happened. But I did that. I kept the 2 agreements. I just, because I went on some crazy bad dates, right? But I did. I was committed to doing 50 dates and to showing up as my real self. And so that's why my advice to you, if you're starting a coaching practice, is before you even wonder whether or not you're capable of creating a practice, do 50 dream sessions and coach from your essence. Before you get discouraged, you've got to, this is what I mean by you have to do the work. So, but that's how I met Michelle. And then when I met her, here's the story that I was going to tell that's kind of funny, about how we could have met 5 or 6 months before. Do you want to tell that part? You tell it.
So I am going to tell you my version of the story, because it's also important to realize that there are many different ways to approach finding your beloved. And I had sort of a different, several years before we met, I was on a catch and release program. I caught a lot, and I loved them all, and I released them gently into the sea again. With the theory that if I wasn't going to find the person right then and there who was going to be my person, I was going to have a really good time. I was going to love people. And I'm talking about loving people for periods of time. 3 at a time, because that way you don't get too obsessed with one or the other. Like you can be very gracious and generous. And I enjoyed myself. And I was able to meet people and meet wonderful people, amazing people. Oh my gosh, delicious people. And they just weren't the one. And then you let them go gently. And you make sure they're better when you leave them than when you found them. And then I heard from an astrologer way back in 2011 or 2012 that I was going to meet my man in 2017, in February 2017. And I don't really believe in that kind of thing, to be honest, but it stuck in my head. So in February 2017 came along, I started to make room. And I let go the 3 that were currently in play. And I made room. And I got to the end of February, and I was like, damn, what happened? And then March came along, and then I started seeing someone I'd seen before, and he came back and forth, and that was not the one. And I was really getting kind of sad a little bit at that point, just a little bit. And I met Robert through a dating app, and I had forgotten how much I hated dating apps, so I'd gotten on this dating app, and went on one date, and then thought, oh, I'm not doing this again. Went off the dating app, and then months later realized that I was actually still on it, even though I'd taken it off of my thing. So people were still sending me messages, and some guy I ran into on the street said, hey, I sent you a message. And anyway, so I thought I got to get on there, get off there. Went back to the app, went to my profile, started deleting everything, and then there was this one message from this guy. No, well, not quite from February, but it was from several months before. And I thought, God. And it was kind of like the picture on the back of that book, and I'm like, I'm better than I could imagine. And it was a great message, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Maybe one more online date. And we met at the cafe, and as I mentioned before, Robert came in, very Roberty, strode on in there, and I'm like, damn, he's cute. And then I said the thing about, I think I may have met you before, because I did. I really believed that. And he looked at me and he said, no. And I thought, oh, friendly guy. And we went to the table, and he's got really long legs. And he sat at the table, all body language the other way, he often does, because his legs are long and doesn't put them under the table. And it was all sort of kind of not quite there, all that 100% showing up. He was not quite 100% showing up there. And we were chatting for a while, and he was really reserved. And then he was asked me about what I did, and I was telling him, and I said, yeah, and I teach these sex and love workshops. And all of a sudden, he really laughed. And his whole body language swung my way. And what I saw in that moment was that he had the best laugh lines. I saw his laugh lines. I saw that this was somebody who actually laughs and smiles a lot, but he's so shy. And he is shy, right? And that's what I saw in that moment. And that's when I knew that he was going to be my guy.
And testosterone. Hair and testosterone.
Yeah, but the other part of it is that during the course of that conversation, it turned out that we had one common connection on LinkedIn. And while we were there together, she happened to text me. She was a former client of both of ours. And she texted me something. And Robert said, oh, tell her Robert Ellis says hello. I said, yeah, Robert Ellis says hello. And she wrote back saying, what? How do you know him? And I said, online date. And she wrote back, a thing this long saying, I tried to introduce him to you months and months and months ago, and he never followed up with it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The rest is history.
She gave me Michelle's number months before we met. And I said, yeah, whatever, And I never called her. People were always trying to fix me up, and so we could have met probably around the time the astrologer said we would have met. But the point of all that is never never, ever give up hope.
And find your own path.
Yeah, find your own path.
Stay open. That's all that matters.
But you have to put yourself out there too. You can't just sit at home and wait for your beloved to knock on the door. Yeah. Look for the laugh lines. Yeah. Greg. No, that's what I say. Yeah, so what I say is, look, if you do the work, success is assured. I can't tell you when or how it will happen, but if you do the work, success is assured. It's not metaphysics, it's statistics. You have to do the numbers. If you are an entrepreneur and if you're a coach creating a practice, you're an entrepreneur. If you want to create it, you have to put in the numbers. I don't know. I actually did keep a spreadsheet, but I don't remember exactly what numbers I got up to. I kept a spreadsheet when I started. I kept a spreadsheet of all the people I coached pro bono, most of them pro bono or extremely low bono, and I just coached and coached and coached. You just have to put in the numbers. One of the things that new coaches do is they become too attached to the outcome. You do a dream session and then it's like dating, and you fall in love with everybody you do a dream session with, and then you're sitting by the phone waiting for them to call you. That's a huge mistake. You just go on the next date. Yeah. You got to have 3 in play at all times.
Oh, and honestly and kindly.
Yes. I'm glad she got it out of her system before we met. So. Okay. Anything else you need to say to feel complete for the day? Yeah, Gary. Mike.
Okay. I feel a little bit vulnerable sharing this, but I'm very inspired by the story of how you guys met. I would I'm wanting to call in my beloved. And so I consulted with someone who is kind of like a medicine man, a seer in the tradition of a tribe in Africa. He's studied with Malidoma Somé. Some of you may know that name. And so he did a divination, and he counseled me to go and do a ritual on Mount Tam. He said, you have to go to a mountain and do the ritual and pray to the spirits and ask them, tell them this is important, why you want to do that. And I had never really done that before. And I actually enlisted a guide, an ally, to accompany me. And so I asked for, my beloved. And within about 5 minutes, a raven couple showed up like 3 feet from me and did a mating dance. And apparently this does not happen very often. It's never happened to me before. And they stayed with me for about 35 minutes and sang to me, and I sang back. It was really quite extraordinary. And I'm still waiting for the raven in human form to materialize. But well, it's been a little bit harder during COVID to do that, but I'm starting to come out. But I have felt despondent, so I can relate to your comment too. And so that is a good reminder.
Thanks for that, Gary. Yeah, I mean, I really believe in love, and I really believe that there's someone for everyone. But it's, I know I've shared this before, at least with some of you. My favorite Rumi quote, although I've read recently, it might come from Course in Miracles and not Rumi, but anyway, one of my favorite quotes is, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you've built against it. And I don't know where I first read that, but I wrote that out on a Post-it, and I put it on my computer, and I put it on my refrigerator. And I really took that on as work, because I thought about it and I thought, I have a lot of barriers to love. I realized that I was very judgmental. I mean, not just keeping beloveds away, but like I kept friends away. So I really did work on that. I made a list. I mean, I literally made a list of all the barriers I had built against love, and I started working through that list. And I recommend that exercise, not just for creating love. You can replace love with anything else you want to create. Your task is not to seek a successful practice. Your task is to seek and find all the barriers you've built against it. So, anyway, on that note. Oh, not anyway. I'm so grateful for your participation, and I hope that you have had a good day, and I wish you well this evening. Sleep well. Have wonderful but restful dreams, and we'll see you here in the morning. Thank you so much.